Good morning, everyone. Well, as you watch this will be Easter morning, and so I'm just going to do a quick Easter story. You should all know this, but you've got to have it so you can tell your friends about it. This is the second time of the year, Christmas being the other, where people expect Christians to talk about Jesus. So you can get away with it a lot easier today than you can on any other day, because they're respectful to a degree of our holidays. They may not believe in them, but that's what you're supposed to do, is to help them get the information so they can make their own choice. It's not up to you to save anybody, it's up to the Spirit. But the Spirit of God uses us as tools. It's like we hand out tracts, well, Jesus hands out Christians in hopes that people will believe. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today is really what Jesus had to do for us. This was not an easy thing for him to do. But he took the place of our sin and became the lamb sacrifice to remove our sins. Up to that point, any of the work of the high priests and all the sacrifices that they did, they only covered the sins. Jesus literally removed them permanently, never to be brought back up. If they're brought back up, that's Satan. Okay, so I hope this inspires you to get out and tell people about Jesus. Don't lose this opportunity. Okay, so Jesus died on the cross carrying the sins. How did he get there? Why did he get there? We know that he was fulfilling prophecy. But why was there a prophecy about this? See, God knew from the beginning that man was not going to be able to live up to the sacrificial law. They weren't going to be able to stay sin-free. Jesus was sin-free to prove that it's possible, but he didn't have the other half of the DNA that we do. We are sinful. We can't get away from it until we get to heaven. So we have to constantly go back and forth to Jesus. Oh, sorry, I sinned again. Forgive me, please. I'm repentant. All that stuff on an ongoing basis. We have our daily prayer. Forgive us our debts. We forgive our debtors for our sins, however you want to interpret it. Okay, now, it was not easy at all for him as a human being. The God side of him knew what he was doing, but he was still half human, and he had to go through all this stuff. So we're going to read some out of Matthew. He's in the garden, Gethsemane. It's one of the places he liked to go. It was a peaceful, tranquil place. So we went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." A lesson for us as well. He knew what was coming. He knew the pain that he would have to suffer. And the burden of sin, we find on the cross, separated him from God for a moment. Something he'd never felt before. Very frightening. Have our ranger coming down here to check on us, check on the sites, make sure everything's okay. I'll see if he is stopping or not, and if not, then we'll just keep on going. Okay, there's some people that have gone off on a hike, but there's some people setting up something in the pavilion over there, so there's going to be some family there. Spend time with family, of course. Don't forget why we're celebrating. Okay, continuing on Matthew 26:48. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "Whomever I kiss, he is the one, seize him." the kiss of death. It's been around since Jesus. Immediately he went up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Rabbi simply means teacher, so it's nothing complicated. But he kissed him. And we know the deal about, cutting the ear off and Jesus restoring it and stuff. We know all that. But I wanted to focus on Jesus' time right now. So let's continue on. The religious leaders mocked him. Their leader, their Messiah, the one that they should have been looking for and been respectful for, they mocked him because they weren't true religious leaders. They were into the religion of me, me, me. Matthew 26:66. What do you think? They answered him and said, "He is deserving of death." Asking the people. Then they spat in his face and beat him, and others struck him with their palms and hands, saying, "Prophesy to us, Christ. Who is the one that struck you?" That's mocking. It's also painful mocking, too. It wasn't just verbal. And his disciples, the ones that grew in faith with him, traveled with him, heard all of his messages, they abandoned him, including Peter. So Peter in 26:75, and Peter remembered the word after he's already denied him, remembered the word of Jesus who had said to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. So he went out and wept bitterly. He knew what he had done. And he knew that Jesus was right again. Jesus was always right. Peter just could not get that in his head. He always had to do something. Now, one of the things that we're going to start seeing here coming up in our world around us, you get a few agitators out there, and you can basically turn a mob against somebody. And they did that in Jesus' time. So 27:17, therefore when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release? Barabbas, the thief, or Jesus, who is called the Christ?" Well, we know what happened, but let's continue reading on. Let's go down to verse 27:20. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the multitudes that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. Stir the crowd up, and it's happening now. They get paid people, these rich people that want this chaos that's always going on around us lately. They have paid people out there that are, their job is to get the crowd stirred up. Get out there with a lie or two and attack somebody that they want them to rally against. Nothing changes. So when Pilate saw that, in 24, when Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was arising, the crowd was getting rowdy, he took water and washed his hands. "None of my affair. This is all yours, people. I am innocent of the blood of this person. You see to it." And all the people answered him, "His blood be on us and our children." Well, that's true for sure. Then he released Barabbas to them, and when they had scourged Jesus, scourging is a beating on your back or parts of your body, with leather strips, but that's not good enough. They attach things that cut and gouge, rocks or metal, whatever they can put on there. So it's not just the leather, it's everything else that they can put on it. So very painful. Scourged Jesus, and they delivered him to be crucified. Now, crucifixion wasn't a special thing they created just for Jesus. It was the standard Roman way of getting rid of people. They do it very publicly as a public showing so that the people will go, oh my God, I better not do this because I don't want to end up like that. Yet they still have people up on crosses all the time. There were two other men up there with Jesus when he was crucified. Okay, so now that he's been delivered, the soldiers are not helping. Matthew 27:27. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. And when they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." Then they spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. Mob violence carries over to the authorities who should have been fighting for him. Now, all this stuff took a toll on him physically. He was probably in excellent shape normally, because they did a lot of walking everywhere they went. Even when they went for the birth of Jesus, Joseph walked and Mary rode, only because of her condition. But normally people back then walked everywhere. Only the rich had chariots. Matthew 27:32. The king was on the cross, and now they came out and they found a man, Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross, so they had to get somebody out of the audience. I'm sure the people were lining the streets to watch this spectacle that was being put on. But he couldn't carry his cross, so they got someone to help. Matthew 27:37. And they put up over his head the accusation written against him. This is Jesus, King of the Jews. Now, they didn't want that. The religious leaders didn't want that, but the Roman authorities had power over them. So they did that, kind of mocking them, saying, look, you're doing this, but this is what you're doing. You're killing your king. Even the Roman authorities had some belief in him, but the religious leaders didn't. And it was very painful, obviously physically, but now probably the most painful part, why Jesus is on the cross, Matthew 27:46. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That's the Greek. That means, my God, why have you forsaken me? God couldn't look on the sin, even though it was being carried by Jesus. This was just a moment, but it probably seemed like a lifetime to Jesus. That was probably also more painful than anything else. And eventually we know that he says it's finished, but that's in one of the other Gospels. We're just going to continue reading here, 27:50. And Jesus cried out with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. He died. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. Hard to do. And the graves were open, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. We're going to get to see these Old Testament people. We're going to get to see Moses and Elijah and Abraham and all these people. It will be a mixed day, happy and sad at the same time, but Jesus said he'd wipe away our tears for the sad part. Remember this story. Remember this man who lived and died for us, because he was more than a man. And we have the same spirit. It says he gave up his spirit. We have that same spirit in us. Now we're constantly dealing with the flesh side, because he didn't have that, but we do. But we do have the Spirit of God in us. And we can do things that he did, and greater things than he did, we are told. Get out and tell the world there's not that much time left. We can't tell when the rapture is going to happen. We can't tell when the world is going to be in turmoil. My guess is we're getting ready to hit into this very violent era just before the Antichrist steps in and brings peace. And that would be the appropriate time for a rapture. Be ready. Prepare yourself. Look out for your family. Make sure you have enough prepping so that you can get through some of this time, because it's not going to be easy. The Antichrist is not going to be cheered for saving the world from a very peaceful, happy time. He's going to be cheered for saving the world from a time on the brink of total destruction. Enjoy your time with your family. Make sure Jesus is there with you. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.